1 chicken. That is all your gran needed to feed a family of 5 from Sunday right through to Friday tea. No fridge full of ready meals, no second trip to the shops, just 1 bird and a head full of tricks nobody bothers teaching anymore. Number 19 is the reason her gravy tasted richer than anything you have ever made. And most people bin that exact part without a second thought. Number 4 was so frowned upon by the health campaigns of the 1980s that a whole generation simply forgot it existed. These are 25 lost secrets that turned a single roast into a week of dinners. Hit that subscribe button, because once you know these, your shopping bill will never look the same again. Let us count them down. Number 25. Buy the boiling fowl, not the roaster. Before supermarkets sold you plump young birds wrapped in plastic, your gran asked the butcher for a boiling fowl, an older hen that had finished laying. It cost less, sometimes 3 shillings against 5 for a roaster, and it carried far more flavour in the bone. The catch was that it needed time. She would never roast it dry. She would simmer it low for 2 hours with an onion and a bay leaf. And that gentle poaching gave her 2 things at once: tender meat that fell from the carcass and a pot of liquid gold for the rest of the week. The young roasting birds we buy now taste of nothing by comparison. Your gran knew the cheaper bird was the better bird, and she let the pot, not the oven, do the work. Number 24. Roast it breast down first. Here is a trick that has all but vanished. Your mum would set the chicken into the tin breast side down for the first half of the cooking, then flip it over to brown for the last 20 minutes. The reason was simple thrift, dressed up as cleverness. Roasting breast down let all the fat from the back and thighs run down through the breast meat, the part that always dries out and gets wasted. By the time she turned it, the breast was basted from the inside, juicy enough to slice cold all week without anyone complaining it was like cardboard. A dry breast meant sandwiches nobody wanted and meat left on the plate. Wasted meat was wasted money. Flipping the bird cost nothing and saved the most expensive part of the chicken from going to ruin. Number 23. The chicken dripping jar. Every kitchen had one. After the roast, your gran poured the fat from the bottom of the tin through a bit of muslin into a little pot and kept it on the warming shelf. This was not beef dripping, this was the chicken's own schmaltz, pale gold and rich with flavour. She fried Monday's bubble and squeak in it, she rubbed it over the next bird. She even spread it thin on toast with a shake of salt. A whole week of frying came free from one Sunday roast. Then the 1980s arrived, the campaigns against animal fat began, and people poured that precious jar straight down the sink. We replaced it with bottles of vegetable oil we paid good money for, throwing away flavour we already owned. Some families never stopped keeping the jar. They were right all along. Number 22. Salt it the night before. Your gran did not season the chicken as it went in the oven. She salted it the evening before and left it uncovered in the larder overnight. This was not fussiness. It was economy. The salt drew moisture to the surface, then drew it back in, seasoning the meat all the way through rather than just the skin. It also dried the skin out beautifully, so it crisped golden without needing extra fat. A properly seasoned bird meant nobody reached for the salt cellar and nobody left half a plate. One step the night before, costing a pinch of salt, made cheap meat taste like a proper treat. Modern cooks season at the last second and wonder why the inside is bland. Number 21. Stuff it with bread, not money. Stuffing was never about flavour alone in your gran's kitchen. It was a deliberate way to make the bird go further. She tore up the heels and stale ends of the loaf, the bits nobody would eat, soaked them in a little stock with onion, sage, and a knob of dripping, and packed the cavity tight. That stuffing soaked up the chicken juices as it cooked and swelled into a savoury second dish. 1 pound of stale bread, worth a few pence, turned into enough stuffing to fill out 5 plates so the meat itself could be served thin. The bread did the filling, the chicken did the flavouring. It was the oldest trick in the larder, stretching one bird across more bellies than it had any right to feed. Number 20. Bread sauce made from the crusts. Here is where things get interesting. First pattern break. While the chicken roasted, your gran simmered milk with an onion studded with cloves, then thickened it with the breadcrumbs she had saved from the week's stale loaves. Bread sauce was not a luxury, it was a stretcher. A thick, fragrant ladle of it on the plate meant a smaller slice of chicken satisfied just as well. A pint of milk, a handful of crumbs, and a single onion fed the whole table for pennies. The cloves and nutmeg made it taste like Christmas every Sunday. Restaurants now charge you for bread sauce as though it was something rare and refined. Your gran made it from the bits she would otherwise have thrown to the birds, and it carried the meal as much as the meat did. Number 19. The giblet gravy nobody makes anymore. This is the part most people bin. Tucked inside every chicken was a little paper packet of giblets, the neck, the heart, the gizzard. Your gran would never throw that away. While the bird roasted, she simmered the giblets with an onion and a carrot in a small pan, making a dark, intense stock. That liquid went into the gravy, and it is the single reason her gravy tasted deeper and richer than anything you make from a granule tin. The neck alone, simmered down, gave more body than half a jar of bought stock. It cost nothing because it came free inside the bird. Today the packet goes straight in the rubbish, and we buy bottles of gravy browning to chase a flavour we are throwing out every Sunday without realising. Number 18. The 2 oysters are yours. On the underside of the chicken, tucked into the hollow of the backbone, sit 2 small nuggets of dark meat called the oysters. They are the most tender, flavourful bits on the whole bird, and most people never even find them. Your gran knew exactly where they were and dug them out with a teaspoon the moment the carcass was carved. Cook's reward, she called it, though really it was about waste. 2 perfect mouthfuls left clinging to the bone is 2 mouthfuls wasted, and across a week that adds up. She would either eat them on the spot or save them for Monday's sandwich. A few seconds with a spoon rescued the best meat on the animal. We carve straight over the top of them and bin them with the bones. Number 17. Pick the carcass clean while it is warm. The secret was timing. Your gran never let the carcass go cold before stripping it. Warm meat lifts from the bone in clean strands, but once it chills, the fat sets and you give up trying. She would sit at the table the moment the roast was done, fingers working over every rib and joint, and pull off a surprising amount, often as much again as had been carved for dinner. That picked meat, kept covered in the larder, became Monday's pie and Tuesday's sandwiches. The difference between a bird that fed a family for 2 days and one that fed them for 5 came down to those 10 patient minutes. Cold and lazy, you bin half the bird. Warm and willing, you double it. Number 16. The stock pot that never stopped. Here is the heart of the whole week. Once the carcass was stripped, your gran broke it up and dropped it into the biggest pot she owned, with an onion, a carrot, the leek tops, and a bay leaf, and let it tick over on the lowest heat for hours. That stock was the engine of every meal that followed. Soup, gravy, the liquid for the pie, the moisture for the risotto. One carcass, worth nothing at all once the meat was off, gave a gallon of rich stock that would have cost shillings to buy. The smell filled the house all Sunday evening. We pour boiling water over a cube now and call it stock. Your gran would have laughed. She had real broth simmering away from the bones we throw straight in the bin. Number 15. Chicken and leek pie from the scraps. By Monday, that picked meat became the week's grandest meal. Your mum made a white sauce from a knob of dripping, a spoon of flour, and a ladle of yesterday's stock, folded in the chicken, a softened leek, and whatever peas were going spare, and topped it with pastry or a layer of mashed potato. A pie that looked like a proper Sunday dinner was built entirely from leftovers that had cost nothing more. The leek, a few pence, did the bulk of the stretching, so a small handful of meat fed 5 again. The pastry crust turned scraps into a centerpiece. Nobody at that table felt they were eating yesterday's roast. They were eating a brand new dinner, and that was the whole quiet genius of it. Number 14. Potted chicken under a butter seal. Now here is a clever bit of preserving. Your gran would pound the last of the dark meat with a little dripping, salt, and a pinch of mace, press it into small pots, and pour a layer of melted butter over the top. That butter set hard and sealed the meat from the air, keeping it good for days in a larder with no fridge in sight. Potted chicken spread thick on bread became Wednesday's tea, intense and savoury, a meal made from the bits too small to slice. A few pence of butter turned the dregs of the bird into something that kept and tasted like a treat. We bin those last shreds. Your gran turned them into a second product entirely, sealed and waiting on the shelf. Number 13. Coronation chicken from the cold cuts. Controversy incoming. Second pattern break. When coronation chicken was invented in 1953 for the Queen's coronation banquet, ordinary households seized on it for one reason that had nothing to do with royalty. It was the perfect way to disguise leftover cold chicken. Your mum mixed the cold slices with salad cream, a spoon of curry powder, a little chutney and a handful of sultanas, and suddenly Tuesday's tired meat tasted exotic and new. The curry powder, a few pence a tin, did all the heavy lifting, masking the fact that this was the same bird for the third day running. Children who turned their noses up at cold chicken devoured it dressed this way. A grand banquet dish became the cheapest trick in Britain for making leftovers feel like something worth getting excited about. Number 12. Rissoles bound with mashed potato. When the meat was almost gone, your gran turned to rissoles. She minced the last scraps, mixed them with cold mashed potato, a beaten egg, and a shake of sauce. Shaped them into patties, rolled them in breadcrumbs, and fried them in the dripping. The mash was the secret. It stretched a few spoonfuls of chicken into a plateful of crisp, golden cakes. A pennyworth of potato turned almost nothing into a hot tea for the whole family. Fried until crunchy outside and soft within, nobody could tell how little meat was actually in them. This was Depression-era thinking, carried right through the post-war years. Make the cheap thing do the filling, let the expensive thing do the flavour, and never let a single shred of meat reach the bin. Number 11. The wishbone went into the pot too. Your gran wasted nothing, and that included the bones the children had played with. The wishbone, once dried and snapped for luck, went straight into the next batch of stock. So did the little bones left on everyone's plates, scraped back into the pot. It sounds like fussing over scraps, but bones are where the flavour and the body of a good broth come from. The more bones in the pot, the richer the jelly when it cooled. A stock made from the whole skeleton, set firm enough to wobble, proof of all the goodness pulled from bones that most people throw away after a single use. We bin the lot. Your gran got 2 and 3 rounds of flavour from the same set of bones before they were finally finished with. Number 10. Jellied stock for the cold larder. Before fridges were common, your gran used the chicken's own gelatine to keep things fresh. She would reduce that bone stock right down until, once cooled, it set into a firm, savoury jelly. Cold chicken set in this jelly kept for days without spoiling, the jelly sealing the meat from the air just as the butter did with the potted version. A slice of that with a few pickles made a proper cold supper on a hot day with no cooking at all. The gelatine cost nothing. It came free from the bones. People think savoury jelly is peculiar now, something only seen in old cookery books. Back then, it was clever preserving, a way to make Sunday's bird safe to eat on Thursday in a kitchen that had no cold box at all. Number 9. Bubble and squeak with the last of the bird. Monday's classic took on chicken too. Your gran fried up the cold leftover potatoes and greens from Sunday in the chicken dripping, then crumbled through whatever meat scraps were too small for anything else. The edges crisped, the dripping carried the flavour, and a plate of leftovers became a tea worth sitting down to. The name came from the hiss and squeak of it all in the pan. It cost nothing because every scrap of it had already been bought and cooked once. Frying it in the chicken fat tied the whole meal back to the roast that started it. This was the everyday magic of the post-war kitchen, taking the bits and ends of 3 different dinners and turning them, in one hot pan, into a fourth. Number 8. Chicken soup that fed the sick and the well. By midweek, the stock pot earned its keep. Your gran ladled out the broth, added barley or a handful of rice, the last shreds of meat and any soft vegetables going spare, and a great pot of soup fed everyone for twopence a head. When a child was poorly, this was the medicine. When money was tight, this was the dinner. The barley swelled and thickened it into something filling enough to be a meal on its own with a hunk of bread. One carcass, long since stripped of every visible scrap, was still giving up its goodness 3 or 4 days later, in the form of a soup that warmed the whole house. Nothing in that bird went unused. The bones fed the family almost as well as the meat had. Number 7. The chicken liver became a spread for the week. If the giblets included a liver, your gran never wasted it. She fried it quickly in a little dripping with an onion, then mashed it smooth with a knob of butter and a splash of whatever drink was in the house into a rough pâté. Spread thick on toast, it made a tea or a starter that tasted far above its station. One small liver, free inside the bird, became a savoury spread that lasted days under its own butter seal. It was the cheapest luxury in the kitchen, the sort of thing served grandly in restaurants, but made at home from an offcut most people now throw away with the packaging. Your gran tasted richness where the modern shopper sees only rubbish bound for the bin. Number 6. Stretch the gravy across the whole week. Here is the trick that tied every meal together. Your gran made far more gravy on Sunday than the roast dinner needed, then kept the surplus in the cold larder. That gravy, built on the giblet stock, reappeared all week. It moistened Monday's cold cuts, bound Tuesday's pie filling, lifted Wednesday's rissoles. A jug of good gravy made dry leftovers taste freshly cooked, turning a tired plate of cold chicken into something hot and comforting again. The cost was nothing more than the bones and trimmings it was made from. We make just enough gravy for one meal and reach for granules the rest of the week. Your gran made gravy a resource, a thread of flavour she pulled right through 7 days of dinners from a single Sunday's effort. Number 5. Fricassee, the dish that hid the smallest scraps. 4th meal of the week, and the meat was nearly done. 3rd pattern break. When even the pie scraps were gone, your gran made a fricassee, a gentle, creamy stew of the very last shreds in a white sauce thickened with flour and stock. The trick was that the sauce, not the meat, was the dish. A few spoonfuls of chicken floating in a rich, mushroomy sauce, served over rice or a slice of bread, filled a plate as well as any roast. The flour and milk did the work for pennies, while the chicken merely flavoured the pot. French cooks gave it a fancy name, and chefs demonstrated on the telly as though it were refined cuisine. Your gran called it using things up, and she was doing it long before anyone thought to write it in a recipe book. Number 4. The skin rendered down into cracklings. This is the one the health campaigns made us forget. Your gran never threw away the chicken skin. She laid it flat in a low oven until it rendered out its fat and crisped into golden cracklings, salty little shards the children fought over, while the fat that ran off topped up the dripping jar. 2 products from one offcut, and both came free. Then came the 1980s, the war on animal fat, and skin became the villain. People stripped it off and binned it without a thought. We now buy bags of pork scratchings and crisps to chase that exact salty crunch, paying for a treat the bird gave us for nothing. Your gran's cracklings cost a few minutes in a cooling oven and used a part of the chicken most of us never even consider eating now. Number 3. Curry on the last day to mask the age of it. By Friday the chicken was old and your gran knew it, so she made a curry. A strong, spiced sauce of onions, curry powder, and a spoon of chutney or jam covered any tiredness in meat that was 4 or 5 days into its life. Served over rice that bulked it out for pennies, a curry turned the very end of the bird into the most exciting meal of the week. The spices, cheap and long-lasting, did what no fresh chicken needed, but old chicken depended on. This was thrift, dressed as adventure. Nobody at the table thought they were eating the dregs of Sunday's roast. They thought they were having something special, and that little sleight of hand at the end of the week was how one bird crossed the finish line with its dignity intact. Number 2. Render the fat to fry next Sunday's bird. Your gran ran her kitchen in a circle. The dripping she saved from one chicken did not just season the week's meals, it greased the tin and basted the next bird the following Sunday. Nothing started from scratch. That jar of pale gold fat connected one roast to the next, a small, unbroken chain of thrift running through every Sunday of the year. A spoonful rubbed over the skin gave a crisp, golden finish without any bought oil at all. It is a habit that vanished entirely when we decided animal fat was the enemy. Your gran's kitchen wasted nothing across not just a week, but a lifetime of Sundays. Each roast quietly feeding into the next, the same jar topped up and drawn down again and again for years. Number 1. Boil the bones twice and let nothing escape the pot. And here is the secret that sat at the very heart of it all. After the first stock was made, your gran did not throw the bones away. She topped the pot up with fresh water and simmered them a second time, drawing out the last of the goodness for a lighter second broth that became the base of a soup or a sauce later in the week. Only when the bones gave up absolutely nothing more were they finally finished with. From one chicken she pulled the roast, the cold cuts, the pie, the rissoles, the pâté, the cracklings, the curry, 2 batches of stock, and the dripping that started next Sunday all over again. That was the whole quiet philosophy of her kitchen. A single bird was not a meal. It was a week, drawn out one clever step at a time, until there was genuinely nothing left to give. There they are, 25 lost secrets that turned one chicken into a week of dinners. Try just one this Sunday, then come back and tell me which one your gran knew, because she knew. And now you know too.